Welcome, 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 my brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for being part of this live reading. As you can see, we are in the fifth part of this Cosmic Narcissism series, and we are going through the creation of a cosmic arc narcissist. And I am presenting you all this information from the Orion book written by Wes Penre. As you can see, please go to the website. I have several links in the text box where you can find more information about Wes Penre, his videos, and so on. If you go to the website, there's a web page completely dedicated to him. There are pictures of the books, and if you click on one of them, then you will be redirected to the Amazon page where he sells his books from. All right, so let us start. I want to say also that I pass this information on because we need to wake the heck up in seeing what is truly going on and why we as human soul group, at least the majority of human souls, are participating in the total destruction of our planet Earth. This is our planet, and it's not a planet of a bunch of um, fallen archangels and angels, fallen angels, who have decided that this needs to be their planet or whatever. It is our planet, and it's about time that we are taking this planet back into our hands and that we start to understand the differences also between a patriarchal system and a matriarchal system, which will also be one of the live book readings I will do. Let us start. The creation of a cosmic arc or arch narcissist. In the beginning of her creation of the universe, Sophia was ignorant too, even though she is spirit. This kind of universe of free will had not been created before. It is an experiment. It is a very exciting concept because it is completely unpredictable. All these souls can create individually as they may, and creation is not likely to ever stop. To be able to create a universe like this, it must include some degree of ignorance. If Sophia knew what would happen, creation would lose its meaning. We equate ignorance with darkness, so darkness needs to be a part of creation. This is what the Gnostic texts are talking about when they explain how Sophia, the Aeon, from the Pleroma, the ultimate spirit realm, created the universe of spirit and matter. The Gnostics, who were patriarchs, as it turns out, looks at God as masculine, so therefore they need to put Sophia, the creatrix, in a somewhat lesser light. Therefore, they tell us Sophia made a mistake when she was creating Orion, or better said, Arion, of Aryan, which I think can't be further from the truth. She had planned it this way, and that is what makes it interesting and exciting. The unpredictability. It was a brilliant idea. It's endless creation. Speaking of endless, many of us are exhausted from having to live in a matrix that overwhelms us with pain, suffering, and energy snatches. And there are those who say they just want to reunite with Source and become one, being in a constant bliss in some sort of paradise or heaven, to get rest or a break. This might seem tempting when our energy is running low, but that is not a state we want to be in. That was probably the state Source was in before Source divided into smaller units to explore herself. She was so-called bored. She was all-knowing up to that point and wanted to see if she could explore herself in some new way. Thus, she emanated traits of herself into separate units in a downward fashion. And here we are, souls in a vast universe. We may feel exhausted now, but once we leave our bodies and exit the matrix, we will regain our suppressed and stolen energy and become enthusiastic again. Now, let us recap some of what we learned about archangels and expand on it. When Sophia had created the Orion or Ariane blueprint, she needed helpers who could assist her on her quest. I do not know who or what she created first, but one of her first creations was probably the archangels, and Archangel Uriel, whom we know better as Lucifer, was created first. As we just discussed, Sophia had no idea what consequences her creations would have. The archangels have souls, just like we do, but they do not have free will in the same sense we do. But they have a mind. They have some free will, according to esoteric teachings, but their purpose is another than ours. They lack spirit, and they were born or created to serve Sophia. This was working, and the archangels obviously did their job well. By the time they came into the picture, Sophia had already put in place the elements of creation. The first and the most important element is, of course, ether. The fifth element, also called spirit. This is the source from which all initial creation originates. The four elements spirit can use to create in this universe are fire, air, water, and earth. These elements are the base for all creation. Archangels lack spirit, but instead they can manipulate the four elements. And this is how they are, and always have been, helpful to Sophia in her soul avatar form as the Queen of the Stars. Manipulating the elements is equivalent to so-called magic. And that is also what magicians have learned to do to a various degree. What Sophia perhaps did not consider when she created the archangels was that they would one day would feel threatened. From a down-to-earth perspective, they were afraid to lose their job. And I will explain in a moment what I meant by that. So first, let us review some important things. The archangels are not immortal. They lack spirit, and they cannot create in the physical universe other than through technology and to manipulate the elements in a so-called magical sense. They can use their minds to manipulate the four elements, while souls who are not yet spirited can only physically work with what is already created. A good example of that would be a person who builds a house, creates a pond in the garden, and puts seeds in the ground. Then he creates a windmill and chops wood to make a fire. Thus he uses all four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. In his creations, archangels can also create when in physical form, but they can also create with their minds from what is already created. They are the so-called magicians, in the sense that they can control the elements with their minds, such as creating tornadoes, earthquakes, and change the weather, etc., on already developed worlds. In addition, some of them are educated to use technology to assist the mother in her creations. For a very long time, the archangels were probably the most powerful beings in the universes, aside from the queen herself. They were her primary helpers. The most powerful archangel was Uriel, whom we know as Lucifer, the firstborn. As described in different literature, he was quite prideful, bright and shining, the most powerful and the most intelligent of them all. He was created to be the top archangel, although the others were very powerful too, and most of them probably still are. However, archangels cannot evolve. They are what they are and were created to be as such, and they always stay that way. Thus, they are limited in that sense, which is probably connected to that they lack spirit and the ability to obtain it. The archangels became the mother's helpers, doing what they were created to do. And there were always things to accomplish because creation went on, and new soul groups and worlds came into being. It appears the problems started on a big scale when the Queen of the Stars decided to create the human soul group, which would be completely different from all other soul groups up to that point, because we would be equipped with spirit already from soul birth. She, Sophia, the Queen of the Stars, wanted to see if we could become better creator, so-called gods, than what was already out there. Based on that, we have spirit, i.e., full creative abilities already to begin with, instead of earning it later. We were creator, so-called gods, from the get-go. The Queen of the Stars, Sophia, our divine feminine, also told whomever it concerned, including the archangels, that if this was successful and the human soul group would graduate, being able to reach the goal, she would from thereon implement this experiment on new worlds. However, this had some unexpected implications for the archangels. So far, they had been much needed in the creation process because new souls and worlds required their assistance. But if the human soul group was successful, the Queen of the Stars, our divine feminine Sophia, would start populating the universe with souls who immediately had fully developed creative abilities, implying that such souls could do the same job as the archangels, and much more. Such spirited souls would also be able to not only manipulate the elements with their minds, they would also be able to create new worlds, galaxies, and eventually universes on their own. They would gain next to equal power to the Queen of the Stars, our divine feminine, Sophia, and they would be better and more developed than the existing creator gods out there. Eventually, there would be so many of them that they could completely take over the entire creation process, putting, and here it comes, archangels out of business. The human soul group became a threat to the archangels. They might have been fine with the fact that souls developed and became spirited because it was a slow process, and archangels would always be needed up to the point of this new human experiment, or rather, from the implications it could have. Although Lucifer, better known as Uriel, and thus the chief leader of the archangel group, was probably not the only archangel who realized all this. He was the first to seriously react. His title as the most powerful being in the universe could potentially be questioned, and he and the others of his kind could potentially lose their purpose, their jobs, and their positions. Furthermore, while they cease to exist if they are no longer needed. We know Lucifer was demoted from the chief scientist position, which made him rebel. But I also believe, based on esoteric material showing that the archangels are jealous of us, that Lucifer has resentments toward his mother, the Queen of the Stars, divine feminine, Sophia, for creating us. And so a narcissistic injury for seeing a soul group develop that is immortal and more powerful than him started to grow in this Uriel slash Lucifer archangel being. Whether or not he expressed this to his mother, the Queen of the Stars, went on with the experiment. Upon this, Uriel, or better known as Lucifer, was also demoted as discussed earlier. That was his first fall from grace and a big blow to his pride, and he imagined he could see the rest coming down the pike, both for him and his brother archangels, because he did not get any response for his concerns from his mother and stepfather. He decided to rebel. In the Bible, it says that Lucifer managed to persuade a third of the angels in heaven, including some of the archangels, such as Metatron, also known as Marduk. Lucifer and his co-conspirators decided they needed to stop this experiment from succeeding. And Lucifer carried a lot of anger. Prideful as he was, he thought that because the human soul group consisting of so many spirited souls could greatly assist him in taking over the universe and overthrow his own parents. That is cosmic grandiosity at its worst. Then, as we know it, the Titan War played out, which destroyed Tiamat and made us prisoners of war. What was it that created the narcissist in Lucifer slash En.Ki, or better known, this fallen archangel Uriel? Well, even though En.Ki intentionally separated from his mother, it was prematurely in the sense that it was never supposed to happen. Archangels do not separate from the mother creatrix. They are created to be her helpers forever. What happened with this archangel Lucifer, also known as Uriel, was something unique. The separation could have created trauma in En.Ki, also known as Lucifer slash Uriel. I assume that I do not think that was the main reason he became a narcissist. He was born prideful because he was created that way. It was his trait as the leading archangel. He was grandiose and entitled, but compared to a narcissist whose grandiosity and entitlement is just a facade, a false self to protect a very frightened true self. Underneath, Lucifer's pride and entitlement was actual. It was real. He was the most powerful being and he was entitled. It was not a false self, it was him. This doesn't make him a narcissist because narcissism is a specific developmental process and it's delusional. However, pride and entitlement probably and eventually made him prone to narcissistic behaviors. Thus, over time, he became more derogatory toward others. and more selective regarding from whom he educated. So long as he was at the top, he was not overly narcissistic. It was when his position became threatened that he reacted, just like we would react if someone would try to take our position in life away from us. Something that is really close to our essence. Anything that challenged his position probably became a threat to him, and he became uncomfortable. Then, when his mother, the Queen of the Stars, the Divine Feminine, um, wanted to start the human experiment, he saw his own position even more threatened. He complained about things to his mother, but he didn't get the response he hoped for. One was to never start the experiment. Then, when he was demoted because of his arrogant behavior, this created his first so-called narcissistic injury. He felt ashamed and rejected, and he lost status in the rest of the universe as the grandiose archangel. These injuries and his own fear to fall lower in rank made him and his co-conspirators rebels. But clinically speaking, and from a human perspective, he was still not really a narcissist. This became later. He and the rest of the rebels became clinical narcissists and psychopaths when they were stripped of their creative abilities. Remember, in chapter 9, we discussed the introjects of a narcissist. The outside world does not exist to them. They only have their introject, which is in their mind the real world, so to speak. It is not that the introject is not real, it is real in the narcissist's own inner universe. But from their perspective, there is no real life outside themselves, only objects. And that is why narcissists are treating their partners and everyone around them, better said, as an object, a supply of, better said, a source of supply. They can use to create their inner world through objects, like pieces in a chess game. After N.Ki, or Lucifer / Uriel, got stripped of his creative abilities, that was exactly what happened to him. He could no longer create outside his mind because he could no longer use the four elements for this purpose, and he could not even sustain his soul energy, but needed to get it from outside himself. Someone still not stripped of these abilities must have helped him create an artificial body he could use to move around. And this artificial body is in actuality a cyborg construct. Or he Lucifer slash Uriel slash En.Ki would be immobile. Then he might have created artificial bodies for his cohorts, and thus they all became cyborgs. And in the former live book reading of this morning, which I recommend highly to go back, I have read to you that this fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki has presented itself as God the Father of this patriarchal matrix. So if you know this, then people need to wake up that they are in actuality worshipping a fallen archangel that has become a cyborg. Yeah, so keep this very in mind. This is very important information. So also what I have stated in this morning's live book reading, also done from the Orion book written by Wes Penre, is we have this sentence in the Bible, "Be ye perfect as I, God the Father, am." And I said we need to flip this sentence, because this means that we need to become like this fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer, that is a fallen archangel who has become a cyborg himself, that is presenting itself as God the Father in this world, better said, matrix, patriarchal matrix. So it is about time that we start to wake up and question every single thing, which is a healthy thing to do. Questioning things is healthy because through questioning things, we get pieces and pieces together. And so we can form a puzzle for ourselves that explains truth to us. I continue. Now we have a clinical narcissist, someone who can only create in his mind and keep it there. To the outside world, this became and becomes, to the outside world, this becomes a fantasy. And I also stated in the part 3 of this Cosmic Narcissism series, I have also said that we as human beings are in actuality terraforming this planet Earth, which is our home planet, into, and according, better said, according to the fantasy of this fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki, who is not able anymore to create the things by himself because he has been stripped from all his creative abilities, and because of this he fell completely and has now become a cyborg because he is operating from an artificial body. So now we get to another understanding of the real plan behind AI and behind all technology that is presented to us. AI is not what people think it is. And go back to the videos about the book readings I have done titled AI is not what you think it is, or AI is not what people think it is. So please go to there and start to understand what the singularity really is, what this metaverse really is all about. It is far sinister and darker than you think. So we are in actuality we are sharing a fantasy. Yeah, this is what is known as shared fantasy. This also happens in personal narcissistic relationships. Eventually, the partner, better said the supply, starts to be pulled, better said the partner or supply of the narcissist is more and more pulled into the fantasy world of the narcissist, him or herself. And it's imagery. So to the outside world, this becomes a fantasy, an imagery that does not exist outside his mind. To be able to create his fantasy outside his introject, i.e., he, Lucifer / Uriel / En.Ki, needs help from the, between quotation marks, objects. He needs the help of the human beings in the physical universe, i.e., humans, through his proxies. His proxies are the global elite or elite, his elected humans. By manipulating us from their authoritarian positions behind the scenes, the elite or the elects or elects were where L means of the so-called divine, have since been on a quest more aggressively than ever before to fulfill Lucifer's, or better known as Uriel's or En.Ki's introject, his fantasy, his plan. And as last I go through the last pieces, this is more or less a recap. So they gave us their minds. Now we are back to the quote from Carlos Castaneda, which opened this chapter. His quote has a deep and sharp meaning, much deeper than most people might realize. To give it the most meaning, I would also reverse it because it works both ways. We gave them our minds. So they did not only give their minds to us, we allowed it to happen to give our minds to them. Or if we want to pinpoint it, we gave this fallen archangel, Uriel / Lucifer / En.Ki, En.Ki, our minds. It means we have created our own prison, our own matrix. En.Ki created the so-called, between quotation marks, blueprint, as we shall see in the next chapter. But we created the rest. We are complaining about wars, about pains, about sufferings, about injustice, about covert control, etc. And although this is true and will be so long as the matrix exists, We created our own environment. Humans are creator gods, and En.Ki took advantage of this, and he made us create a world that he wanted. So we cannot constantly finger point to the elite and the oligarchs only. We have all a part in the miserableness happening on this planet. We all have a part in the destruction of our home planet. Not only the oligarchs, the elite, all of us are debit to the destruction of this planet Earth. All of us have a role in this destruction of this planet Earth. So we need to stop playing victims. We are no victims because we have created all this also by listening to what has been asked from us to create. Instead of saying no, we said yes to it. Um, and we did it for him. We live in a shared fantasy with En.Ki. Yeah? We are creating his fantasy here on this planet Earth. We are terraforming this planet Earth in a way that is in accordance and alignment with the fantasy of Lucifer / En.Ki himself. We literally have entered En.Ki's mind and he has entered ours, and now we have a real trauma bond. So now you get to understand how important this information is, because we need to undo this trauma bond. So we have a real trauma bond with him, Lucifer / En.Ki, that is difficult for many people to break. We live inside his, between quotation marks, head, because we have become almost exactly the way he wants us to be. We live in a narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic world. And we see around us many human beings becoming more and more narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic. We gave up our own identities. And this is exactly, lovely brothers and sisters, that we see happening around us in a fast pace. Many people are giving their sovereignty and their free will away and into the hands of this fallen archangel Uriel / Lucifer / En.Ki. We gave up our identities, soul energy, free will to a large degree, and our entire existence with that. And we gave it all to En.Ki and his cohorts, who now possess most of it. There are still rebels among us who are waking up, thankfully, and I hope many will come, and this is why I am doing what I'm doing. But those who are still asleep are literally so. Our real selves are to a great extent deleted in exchange for a false self, which is En.Ki's or Lucifer's or Uriel's introject. We have become him, or more specifically, we have become how he sees us in his mind and wants us to be. He has manipulated us by crossing our boundaries, gotten access to our minds and emotions, stolen them, and replaced them with his own shame, guilt, anger, resentment, narcissism, and psychopathy. Therefore, as being pointed out by scientific studies, we humans have become more and more narcissistic over time. So, on top of dealing with cosmic narcissism, we also must deal with the narcissism within the human soul group. But like the Pleiadians said, and these were the Pleiadians whom were communicating with Barbara Marciniak. Humankind is still, to some degree, unpredictable, and for Lucifer slash En.Ki's plan to really work all the way, he needs us all to enter his introject. And because that is still not entirely done yet, the manipulation continues. Some of us will never give in, and he will need to let those of us go. But it is now time for his last step to usher in the final goal. And now we get the understanding why the artificial intelligence is so pushed onto us. Now you get to see the bigger agenda behind this whole metaverse plan, behind the cloud, behind AI, behind the digital prison he wants to usher each one of us into. Now you get hopefully also the understanding about the dangers of this block dash chain, yeah, in which the human soul fire shall be for permanent being captured and imprisoned and thus chained. The great work of the ages, as Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki has called his plan, to have everybody under his control, i.e., inside his mind. This is where metaverse, also known as the singularity, comes into the picture. In the next two chapters, we are going to discuss what he is really planning to save himself from his own otherwise inevitable demise. Now, the reader might understand better why the star races in Orion, or better known as Orion, don't want us out there in the shape we are in. We have become a large group of little En.Kis, so to say. As a soul group, we are extremely warlike, very aggressive, more and more narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychopathic, but also very ignorant about how things really work in the universe around us and what is expected from us. They do not want millions or billions of overlords flooding Orion, also known as Orion. Therefore, education and healing need to be done. And if we only want to and put our minds into it, we can definitely do it. To get a better grasp of this, let us compare two different minds, En.Ki's and that of the Queen of the Stars, our divine feminine, Sophia. The Queen of the Stars, just like healthy humans, has an introject, which is her imagination, generating a so-called fantasy about what she wants to create. It is all happening inside her mind. It would stay in her mind only unless she projects her inner creation outward, knowing that she is doing it. Thus, her so-called fantasy will project itself into the universe. She is now aware that it exists in both her mind and outside her mind, and she can distinguish between the two. Therefore, if she creates a soul and starts communicating with it, she knows. She communicates with the soul dash mind as a creation outside herself. The soul mind is not just an object and her introject the only true reality. Both are real, and she can switch her attention between the two. This fallen archangel, Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki, just like the Queen of the Stars and non-narcissistic humans, has an introject, a fantasy in his mind, but it is stuck there. He cannot project it outward without help. He is aware there is an outside world, but he cannot perceive it as being alive. Reality for him is his introject, his fantasy, his dream, so to say, his imagination. He knows he needs feedback from the outside world, but he cannot get it without having someone else creating it for him. Therefore, he gives instructions to the elite humans to implement his fantasy in the outside world. They become his creators and his immediate extensions. They then can delegate the job by manipulating each one of us accordingly, so we ultimately create um, Uriel's slash Lucifer's slash En.Ki's fantasy in the physical realm. This takes time. It takes about 9,600 years in this construct. But now he has managed to almost build the world he wants through us and with us in it. Build it and they will come, as Dr. A.R. Borden said. See the Wes Penre papers, the first level of learning. So we have now, for the absolute most part, become part of his fantasy, his introject, and the outer world corresponds with Uriel's slash Lucifer's slash En.Ki's inner world. But instead of being able to view both the inner and outer as two different realities, his mind is no longer capable of shifting between the two. And only his introject is real for him, the product of what we have created and see around us here on earth is what's inside this fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki's mind. and so are we. This is His will. Only when we heal and become our true selves again can we leave this mind of this fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki's introject and become ourselves, resulting in a better life here on earth and a better future in Orion, also known as Orion. We have made this world cruel and unfair by becoming codependent to this fallen archangel Uriel, also known as Lucifer, also known as En.Ki, and his minions in power and adapted to their will. We become the narcissists we often try to separate from. We have been manipulated, of course, but we were the ones who did it. We created Uriel's slash Lucifer's slash En.Ki's world and became like him in the process, not always as individuals, but as a soul group. And as last, yeah. Sophia, on the other hand, changes her introject accordingly when her outside creation changes in relation to her introject. So while this archangel Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki does the opposite, he tries to change the outside world to fit his fantasy, because the outside world is an extension of his mind and must always correspond with his introject, allowing only a perfect sync between the two. He has truly become a blind god, as the Queen called him a long time ago, according to the Gnostic texts. There it is being stated here, their chief is blind because of his power and his ignorance and his arrogance. He said, with his power, it is I who am God. There is none apart from me. When he said this, he sinned against the entirety. And this speech got up to incorruptibility. Then there was a voice that came forth from incorruptibility, saying, "You are mistaken, Samael," which is God of the blind, the hypostasis of the archons. So, hence, the Norse god Odin has only one eye, for example. He is Samael, god of the blind. The comparison I just made between the Queen of the Stars and En.Ki, whom we also know as the fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer, may sound bizarre, but it is based on human psychology as discussed in chapter 9. And although En.Ki slash Lucifer is an archangel, whom in actuality is also known as Uriel, he has a soul and a mind just like we do, and therefore in many ways his mind reacts like ours would under similar circumstances. I have often said, in order to leave the matrix, we must get rid of all the attachments to this world. By that I mean not only material things such as pets, friends, relatives, and significant others. The most difficult attachment to get rid of is our trauma bond with this fallen archangel Uriel slash Lucifer slash En.Ki. That is the ultimate attachment. Our minds need to separate from his mind, which we will discuss later. I am emphasizing this because it is crucial and the main and perhaps only reason why people refuse to wake up and leave the matrix. This goes deep. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading this very important information coming from this book, The Orion Book, written by Wes Penre. Please buy this book yourself. Go to the website and all the links mentioned in the textbook box below this video. Um, do so and start educating yourselves more and more about narcissism and go through several sources so that you get a very deep understanding of what narcissism is and how you can see it in yourself also. And yeah, ask a spirit in you to guide you to ways of healing from narcissism, and so that you eventually can undo yourself from this trauma bond between you and this fallen archangel Uriel, whom we know better as Lucifer or En.Ki. All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Please share all these videos that I have so far produced in this Cosmic Narcissism series. Share them as much as possible with so many lovely brothers and sisters because we need to heal from this. As last I say, enjoy your evening, have a beautiful evening, and lots of love towards you. And know that I love you tremendously. And from this love, I do this work because it hurts me to see how many of my fellow brothers and sisters of the human soul group are still in a sleep and are in an unawareness. All right, as last, let us listen to a beautiful piece of music from Ben Sound, Sad Day. All right, thank you so much and see you later.